Hey guys, how you doing? So we're nearly there. Paper 2 is coming up pretty soon. So this is just me taking you through the usual last minute tips, but also with a little bit of a focus on dialogues, because dialogues tends to be the one that throws people, but it needn't do. So I'm going to try and make you feel a little bit better about that in the home stretch. Okay, first thing I want to say is massive well done, because it's been a long old exam season. I'm sure you're tired. Hopefully for most of you, this is one of your last ones. So I hope you're looking forward to a really well-deserved break. Put your feet up, look after yourself. One big push. We go again on Monday. Let's have a look at it. Okay, so yeah, looking after yourself, particularly, like I say, when you get into the end of exams and you might feel quite depleted, it's more important than ever to take care of yourself, sleep, eat, hydrate, particularly when it's warm. Do a little bit of exercise just to keep your body kind of in balance. If you've got a pet, I find stroking the pet can be quite therapeutic as well, quite calming. That's why there's a very fluffy cat here. In the exam, obviously we've been through this before, but read the questions several times, because if you miss even one word, it could dramatically change the meaning of the question. So read them through quite a few times. Spend a moment planning. I actually really would do this for dialogues. I know some people don't like to plan, but with dialogues, I think it is a good shout, because it can help to keep you on track in that more unstructured question. And finally, of course, keep a close eye on the time. Remember that the timings that you use for paper 1, they will mostly be the same for this, but dialogues you need a bit longer. So remember, a dialogues is like a mashup of a 10 and a 15, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. All right, so apologies if you know all this, but it's always good to remind ourselves the structure of paper 2 goes like this. So you'll get 2 pairs of Christianity questions. I'm making this video kind of assuming that most people are doing Christianity. If you're not, it will be on your chosen religion. But I know that most people do Christianity. So it'll be 2 10 markers and 2 15 markers. You just have to do those. There's no choice. So that's exactly like it was for paper 1. And it will be structured 10, 15, 10, 15. Nothing says you have to do it in that order, but if you've practiced the timings like that, it might be wise. After that, this is the only place where you get some choice. So there will be 2 philosophy dialogues questions and 2 ethics dialogues questions. You choose one of each. Super important that you don't do both philosophy or both ethics. You have to do one of each. Okay? So the skills, just to remind you, AO1 is assessed in 10 markers, and it's knowledge and understanding. So this is your ability to unpack a concept. The command word is always examine. AO2 is evaluation. It's assessed in 15-mark questions, and it's about your ability to construct an argument and show some critical analysis. Now, dialogues assesses both of these, AO1 and AO2 in the same place, and it's marked using exactly the same levels of response. So there's not really a different mark scheme for dialogues. There is, in the sense that the examiner will have a mark scheme for that question with a list of what they might expect, but they tend to be quite short, and that's because they don't know what people are going to put for these dialogues questions, because they're usually quite broad. So the really important bit for you to be familiar with is actually this. Now, if you've not looked at this for a while, or if you've even not really seen it before, now might be a good time to just pause the video and have a read of this. Now, I have missed off some of the very bottom levels just because I couldn't fit them on the screen, but hopefully you're going to be aiming for level 3 and above anyway. So if you want to have a little look at how your work's going to be marked and the success criteria, just pause now and have a little read through this. So on the left-hand side, it's 10 marks. On the right-hand side, it's 15 marks. But for dialogues, it all goes together. So what you might be able to expect, mean, it's daft to say what to expect actually, because these are all questions that have come up before, either on past papers or in the specimen questions that the exam board provided. So highly unlikely you'll get these, but this is the sort of thing that they like to set for dialogues. So we've got a mix of philosophy and ethics there. These are the kind of statements that you'll be engaging with. And what that will look like actually set out as a question is this. So you'll get your statements, like religious experience gives Christians knowledge of God. And then the instructions will always follow this kind of structure. Critically examine and evaluate this claim with reference to the dialogue between Christianity and philosophy. And if it's an ethics question, it'll say Christianity and ethics. Sometimes they might go with a specific aspect of philosophy or ethics. So I remember one time it was a question, and it was critically examine and evaluate this claim with reference to the dialogue between Christianity and Bentham's ethics. They could do that. If they do, don't panic, because you can handle it. But just watch out for that, and that's why it's super important to read the question. Right, how to actually do these. Selection of relevant material is crucial. What you don't want to do is just throw the kitchen sink at it. You don't want to just try and write down everything you know. If you do that, you're likely to end up putting stuff that really isn't relevant. And also, when people do that, it tends to really hurt their AO2 mark because you're doing too much AO1. Speaking of those things, you need to include both AO1 and AO2 skills. So you need to be examining, unpacking, explaining, and evaluating. Doesn't have to be 50-50. You're not looking to write half your essay AO1, half your essay AO2. Try not to think of it like that. Try and think of it more kind of holistically. You're going to have 45 minutes to do each one. Now, 45 minutes is quite a long time. It will go quickly in the exam, but there's a way to see this as a really positive thing, because you can actually go on quite a journey with your thinking. You know, you can include lots of things. You're going to write quite a long essay. I'm not going to specify how long because it will be different for different people. But because you've got quite a long time, I don't think it's a bad shout to spend 2 or 3 of those minutes coming up with a plan just to keep you on track. If you are someone who really doesn't get any benefit from planning, fair enough. But for most people, I think that is a good idea. You need to draw on material from across the course. So some dialogues questions are quite heavily weighted towards one topic or one topic area, but try and bring in bits from other areas of the course as well. Don't do it kind of like in a very contrived way. Don't try and shoehorn stuff in that really doesn't want to go, but try and make natural links between philosophy stuff and Christianity and ethics stuff and Christianity. If you end up using a bit of philosophy in an ethics question because it's relevant, that's fine. They're not being picky about where your stuff comes from. They just want to see how you think. In my experience, the marking on dialogues is quite often more generous than sometimes we expect it to be, because there's so much that can be credited. But top tip, you must have an overall conclusion to make sure that you can access the top of that 15-mark band. If you're not reaching a justified conclusion, that's going to hurt your AO2 mark a lot. So a little bit more on structure. First thing I need to say up top is AQA have made it very, very clear they don't expect to see any particular structure. So you can structure this however you want. I'm going to recommend a structure because I think, in my experience, it works best, but you don't have to do what I'm suggesting. If you want to do all your AO1 and then all your AO2 in your dialogues, that's fine. AQA will be fine with that. Having said that, I think a good way to do these is to treat it as like a long 15 marker, because that way you'll make sure that you do your arguments, but you're putting in more explanations. So you're unpacking the concepts that you're talking about and you're critiquing them. So way I might structure a paragraph, and you can have a look at some of my other model answer videos to see how I do this, is explain the concept, critique it as part of the argument. So you've got sort of AO1 then AO2 in a paragraph, then you might start another paragraph with a bit of AO1. So you're essentially putting the AO1 around your arguments. And that's fine, because the way this is marked is they don't go through and sort of tick, 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 and this is a mark and that's a mark. They read the whole essay, and then they decide on the levels, which we saw on a couple of slides ago. And then once they've got the levels, they work out the marks. So is it top of that level, middle of that level, bottom of that level? That's how they arrive at your mark. They're not counting the points you make. It doesn't work like that. So one approach, this is the one I'm talking about, is this integrated approach. So this is a good way to get AO1 and AO2 skills in. So you're explaining an idea thoroughly that addresses the statement that's given, either for it or against it, and then evaluate it. So if it's a question to do with how has Christianity responded, you're looking at that, you're thinking, has it been successful? Has it not been successful? Is there a lot of agreement? Is there very little agreement? It's fine to use phrases such as, I think, I find this convincing. You can do your evaluation in first person. You don't have to, but you absolutely can. You can also use rhetorical questions to point out strengths and weaknesses. So you could say things like, surely this doesn't work because it's undermined by X or Y, or what would happen if blah, blah, blah. You can do that. Something I wouldn't bother with is a long introduction explaining what the debate is about, or saying in this essay I am going to evaluate. It's unlikely they give you any marks for that, because you're just saying what you're going to do. You're far better off just doing it. Just get straight in. So the last thing I want to talk about is planning. I would make a quick plan before you start your dialogues. Decide what you want to include. Remember, it's really important what you choose. Quite often people come to me after the exams and they're like, well, I only ended up using about 20–30% of what I revised. Yeah, that's the way it goes. And you can feel quite annoyed by that and quite sort of cheated by it, because you spent ages revising something that didn't come up or you didn't get to use. You just got to deal with that, because if you put in stuff that you know that isn't relevant, it's absolutely no good to you. So pick things that are going to work for that essay, even if it's maybe not what you would prefer to write about. Think at the start about what's your argument going to be. Where are you going to go with it? Do you agree with the statement? Do you think it's a reasonable statement? Try and signpost where you're going. Obviously, you're going to need both sides of the argument, but it's okay to be kind of stronger on one than the other. And also think about the different areas of the course you can draw from. Think about, what have you done in different topics that might be relevant for you. And then the last point, this is mostly an ethics thing actually. Christian views don't just come from the Christianity topics. Natural moral law, situation ethics, divine command theory, they're all Christian views. People like, Aquinas, Anselm, they're all Christians. Descartes was a Christian. So just because it's in philosophy doesn't mean it's not in Christianity. And just because it's in ethics doesn't mean it's not in Christianity. So you need to take a really blended view of the whole thing. If you want to see some dialogues model answers, I have done 2 or 3 walkthroughs. They're in the channel, they're in the playlist. Check those out. Final thing for me to say is well done, massive good luck. Be proud of yourself, because this has been a big shift. Take it easy, and I'll see you soon.